If you're into dark crime dramas, Netflix has released the Polish series Detective Forst, or Forst. Should this twisted tale be on your binge list? When Detective Forst's maverick approach to investigating gets him fired, he teams up with a journalist to solve a series of brutal murders outside the law. So, the central premise of this show is that we follow a detective working to solve a string of murders that has victims left in strange art like poses in precarious environments. An old photo seems like it could hold a lot of clues to why the victims are chosen and who may be next, but the story goes way beyond this to create a complex mystery that's also filled with deceit, manipulation, and some harrowing actions. The look and feel of this is very gritty. Now, the setting, it's a smaller town in the mountains where rain and snow are just coming down to add a somber tone to the visuals. Everything also has this blue gray tone to it, complementing the ominous feeling that envelops the entire narrative. As the central and title character Forrest, he isn't always likable or sympathetic. He's gruff, abrasive, often rude, but also intelligent and effective at problem solving. Now, I love the concept of his haunted persona. Tragedy just seems to surround him, which can cause complications for those around him, amping up dread and then intrigue. But he also brings a bunch of drama on himself, antagonizing his superiors as well as colleagues that are around him. Now, his actions create a bunch of complications which help to build dramatic arcs, but also keep him from being endearing. As we learn right from the start of the series, the show associates elevation with each location, giving us how many meters above sea level each place is. Now, at first, I thought this would have a huge impact or maybe importance on the plot. It doesn't really have the relevance that you might expect. I mean, it's not anything that hampers the story, but just don't become too hooked on that particular detail if you're looking for clues to solve the mystery. Now, I love the camera work in this. Numerous approaches are taken to highlight actions and emotions that enhance the storytelling. There's some handheld footage that's utilized, and while it's shaky, it enhances certain segments to make us feel like we're part of the scene, experiencing the trauma or maybe the actions along with our character. Now, there are also some very creative shots where the camera follows the orientation of a character. So if they're on the ground and they roll over from their back to their front, the camera also rolls. It creates an immersive and effective viewing experience. Now, one thing with the visual storytelling aspect is that because of some of the shot and framing choices, you may be able to guess elements before they're revealed. I was bummed by this because the camera can linger longer than it needs to, which can give away key clues. Sometimes, though, these are false clues, which do help to obscure the truth. Now, something that adds to the mystique is the use of local history for portions of the narrative. I like that it's effective in embracing the darkness that's central to the plot, but the segments also introduce some elements that aren't as pertinent to the storytelling as they seem. I found myself continually captivated by the narrative because there are large risks at stake. Characters, they don't have plot protection that you might think they do, which then increases peril to a massive degree. So many people who are introduced, they're sketchy, but it's also hard to know when to trust someone or who to get attached to. There are some shocking moments, and I appreciate the abruptness of actions for how exciting they were. And with that abruptness, and then the story content, it does focus on some very unsettling and distressing content. Some of it involves children, so just kind of be aware before diving in. I mean, these areas, they're not heavily focused on, and not much is shown in the way of graphic imagery, but even the discussions, they can be upsetting. Now, I do wish that there were more character development for several of our players. Some obscurity works to the story's advantage because to know a character deeply would then reveal too much of the mystery. But some of them we're supposed to feel a connection with despite not being provided with a lot of background. And I found these people harder to relate with or even connect with, even if their situation was dire. Also, some feel like they have way more prominence to do with the story than they actually do. Maybe this is for misdirection, but it's also sometimes disappointing to be introduced to someone who could be a major contributor only to have them disappear from the story early on. This is a 6 episode season, and each episode flew by for me. The urgency of the case, especially with how the story puts Forrest into dire and precarious situations, it creates a narrative that quickly engages and then doesn't release thanks to the great balance of twists, violence, and drama. And if you didn't guess what's going on before it's revealed, we are given a resolution with the central mystery getting all of its answers. Now, I guessed it pretty early on, but was still enthralled and not disappointed by the reveal, especially because the motive, that was completely unknown to me. Now, even though we do get answers, the story is left so that it's not concluded, And I know in this current climate of canceling shows just at random, this can be a frustrating way to end the season, especially with how one aspect was left that doesn't close out the story. Now, I am hoping that we get a second season sooner rather than later because I'm chomping at the bit for more. So, overall, Detective Force delivers a twisted tale of murder with immersive cinematography and gritty aesthetics. The lack of character conveniences and increased risk of peril create an urgent narrative filled with exciting suspense. Some story elements are given more prominence than they warrant, and several characters are lacking in their development, but there are also enough complexities in the plot to create engaging intrigue and mystery. The fact that the season is left open for more creates minor frustration, but if the series gets a second season, this won't be too much of a concern. There is sex, nudity, a lot of profanity, and some brutal violence. I give Detective Forst 4 out of 5 couches. So, have you been watching any good shows lately? Let me know what you're watching in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.